Welcome to Hunts and Unicorns. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And it's a pleasure to welcome Seth Olsen. Seth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
By way of an introduction, Seth, you're currently country manager for the Northern Europe region for MicroStrategy. You're having an incredible impact at the moment. It's your first year within kind of a senior leadership, field sales leadership position. But as an IC, just some incredible statistics and some incredible success. Over 5 years, you've averaged over 200%. Your best year being just under 500% of your number. You've made some absolutely huge kind of deals. Your largest of which is over 4 million. You're 3 times President's Club, 2 times AE of the Year, and it's incredible to just learn about your amazing story, because whilst you've not been indoctrinated within the playbook, you're kind of self-taught, you've had some exposure to it, and then you've really kind of incubated that and really brought that back to life in terms of what you're doing and the success that you're having right now. So we're really excited to tell your story and really share it with our viewers and our listeners. So let's get stuck in. So tell us, how did you actually enter software sales? Take us right to the beginning.
Where does it all begin?
Yeah.
All right, where does it all begin? Like a lot of people coming out of uni, knew nothing of what I wanted to do. So there's, the kind of period of 6 months of reflection post-uni. Where do I want to go? Where do I want to land? And I don't think I'll ever be able to remember exactly how I came to it, but there was just an epiphany moment where it was like, software sales, San Francisco, here we go. Go to Silicon Valley. Meanwhile, at this time, I'm originally from New Hampshire, so East Coast, completely different side of the country. And I just remember signing up to LinkedIn Premium, and essentially that's when my BDR role began, just being my own personal BDR to help me find a job on the other side of the country. And really, there's 2 things there that kind of stood out where, it was a lot of being on the other side of the country, just going down, finding 20, 30 software companies, didn't really know what they did or what exactly. Obviously, I found that out through the course of talking to them, but just had this vision to get into software sales and succeed in that vision. Ultimately, ended up landing at Birst, which was a cloud business intelligence and analytics company backed by Sequoia at the time. And I couldn't have imagined a better place to start.
So take us right there. So obviously, it's incredible. You've proactively gone out. You've sourced your first real opportunity. You've flown, well, it's almost the other side of the world, but it's obviously in the US. But you've flown however many hundreds of miles, and different city, brand new career. How take us there?
Indeed. So I started at Birst as a BDR or an SDR. Actually, at the time, I think we called them LDRs, lead development. But and I also had the fun job of moving all the way to San Francisco, but covering the East Coast.
Oh, wow.
So obviously, there's a 3-hour time difference, and so I was in the office then by 6 a.m., 5 a.m. every day, and really where everything started in my career from an SDR and a BDR perspective was just purely get into that kind of machine, act first, think second type of grinding mentality. And so there was a lot of those early wake ups. An interesting part, walking down San Francisco at 4 a.m. in the morning.
We all experience that.
You see some interesting things on the way to work. But there's a lot of great lessons learned. In the BDR role, it was all about grit and grinding it and putting in, the 12 plus hour days, 100 plus calls, loving hearing no, and all of that. But also one of the great things about just being in that environment at that time, there was a big culture around success and learning. As being part of a Sequoia-backed company at the time, there was a great winning mentality and team mentality behind things. And then also is the early on parts of being an SDR or BDR, it's about networking. So a lot of what I did beyond kind of chasing down leads or opportunities was sitting down with the VP of sales, random AEs at the time, everyone from our CEO to our marketing director, and just saying, how do you do it? How can I replicate what you've done? And being in that culture and in that environment, it kind of started with Burst, but also just being in Silicon Valley as a whole at that period of time, you could just take any sales director out for a coffee and just be that eager BDR ready to learn.
So you're obviously out in the wild. It's it's the first real kind of sales job you've ever had. How did you start to piece together what good looks like? How did you start to gain a perspective of how you wanted to kind of develop yourself and to start creating targets of excellence for yourself?
So I guess I'd unfold that in a couple ways. So the target has always been, to become a leading CRO. And ultimately to get there, one of the great parts about sales, it's merit-based. So I knew that I needed to do my day-to-day job, hit my weekly quotas, monthly quotas, yearly quotas, whatever they were at that period of time, and exceed on that, thrive on the competition of competing with peers to make sure I was on top. But more importantly, it was a learning exercise. So you learn through the job and through doing and through going through calls and meetings, and learn from the no's, learn from the yeses, repeat what happened in the yeses, but also going back to the point of, networking and, meeting with the third then CRO and saying, hey, what would you do if you're in my shoes? I'm trying to get to where you are, but 10 years faster. How do I do that?
You've always gone and learned and seeked out the information that you need to know in order to be the best version of whatever it is that you're applying yourself to. Even from a recruitment perspective, you're always inquisitive around, okay, what's the process? How do I understand that and get to understand that better? So I think, obviously Burst was obviously a really interesting point for you in your career, right? Obviously you started as an SDR, you did an a BDR, SDR, LDR role for a year. Then you transitioned up into management, right? Mm-hmm. And started to lead the SDR team. Tell us about that point in journey and why you decided to do that.
Yeah, it's the most interesting part of kind of that transition was going back to, I was in San Francisco. Burst at the time was just opening up an office here in London and sending SDRs over for kind of 6-month stints. So I put my hand up to go on one of those 6-month holidays, for lack of a better term, over to go work in London. And here I am 8+ years later. So I came over. Originally, the first couple months, I was the SDR for EMEA at the time. And based on the trajectory of the company, and I was able to gel with the team here locally, that SDR position developed into an SDR manager position, covering EMEA and APAC. And we grew, I did that for 2 years, grew the team from just myself to 4 or 6 people at its peak. We had an office based in the UK. We also had people in Singapore and Melbourne. And that was when I really caught the bug in terms of the people management side of leadership. Because it was really interesting to see, first and foremost, kind of go through some of the strategy aspects of building a team, setting quotas, targets, delivering consistently to the business, but then also in particular BDRs, you really get to make an impact on people's careers, and so that was obviously something that really interested me.
And in terms of, again, completely out of your comfort zone, you're obviously in a different country, different culture. What do you think really kind of propelled you to the success? Was it just was it the thirst for success? What was it, the thirst for learning? What was really driving you at that time?
I think probably during that period was actually a crucial period where I really started to transition from work hard to, okay, let's figure out how we can start to work smarter and where we can optimize things to make your life easier, make the team's life easier, deliver better results, enjoy life a little bit more, because the BDR years are amazing, but they're always a grind, and you're always fatigued from it. Thankfully, you're younger when you do it, because it is exhausting. But I would say kind of getting that grasp of, okay, now I'm just not an SDR covering this set of accounts for these 1 or 2 AEs. It's, okay, I can see the impact of the SDR organization on the business, meaning how do we support a field sales team across all of EMEA and APAC that had 10, 15 AEs and covering different verticals, what are the strategy for those verticals, and really kind of delved into the strategy side of running an SDR team at that point in time.
So obviously you've been a student of the game in the SDR function, which is obviously a crucial part to any success of any good seller. You obviously then transitioned into an IC and out onto the field. Tell us about that transition, and tell us about how you took what you learned as an SDR and started to then apply that second phase development into a field sales rep.
Yeah, and there's a couple parts to that. And one of the things during my SDR management time, I was able to work with the then general manager, a guy called David Gray, great leader, and I was able to shadow the field sales team at that point in time into meetings to the point where I progressed up to where he was comfortable bringing in this young American guy and sending him out into the field. And so over the course of 2 years in SDR management, I kind of in the background to that, I was developing all the skills of being an AE. I was shadowing in the meetings. I was helping out with Salesforce and operations, and just trying to, really just sit in the background on as many calls and meetings as I could, just to really learn from what the then AEs were doing. And there's always a right time and a right place. There was an opportunity after 2 years of the SDR leadership position that I was able then to transition into the field at Birst. And I did that for circa around a year, covering various verticals at that point in time, but starting to get my first six-figure deals, which at the time was huge and felt like a great milestone. And then ultimately, after around a year in the field there, Birst got acquired by a company called Infor. I was one of a few who kind of stuck it out for an initial transition period, and then decided it just wasn't the right fit for me, and I wanted to essentially sell bigger deals and learn more. And so I had to think of where I could go to do that. And Birst at the time, again, this is all under the market of the data analytics space. Birst was, maybe you'd call them a challenger, but a smaller vendor. And so I wanted to go to one of the more established vendors, stick within the same market, so that, I felt like I gained a little bit of an expertise in there, never be perfect in it, but enough of an expertise where I could really talk to the customers about not only the technical stuff, but the value they're getting out of the solutions, and sell bigger deals. And so that's why I landed over at MicroStrategy.
4 very successful years, almost 4 very successful years, being a student of the game at Birst. Obviously, you then moved over to MicroStrategy in 2017. You've entered into an enterprise account executive position. Talk to us about the environment of MicroStrategy at that point, and what you entered into, and how you continue to develop as an individual.
Yeah, so MicroStrategy is an established company. I'll put it at that. MicroStrategy is leading enterprise analytics platform, and there's a huge market for it. And the best thing is that focusing purely on purely on enterprise, it's always big organizations, big deals. But it's a 30-year-old company, and with that came into this environment where product-wise, some of the colleagues and some of the leadership team there were spot on and everything like that. But I also then at that point in time identified that, hey, there's things that I have to learn from the outside, and really to continue to improve my game continue to improve the value that I can provide for customers. And that's probably when, even further self-learning began over the course of those 4 years. And I think notably it almost reflects in some of the results over those 4 years. Because the first year there was very much so a learning year. I was fortunate enough to get a few net new logos, build a little bit of my business, get that machine going, but then just propel that through years 2 to 4 of being an IC there. And a lot of that had to do with, the foundations of MicroStrategy, but also outside learning as much as I could, whether it's reaching out to leaders of notable software companies and taking them out for a coffee, or listening to podcasts such as Hunters and Unicorns, obviously. And then reading, reading books. So there's never been a time where there's this good of a exposure to all the works of the Playbook community. So obviously I thank you guys for your work that you're doing in that. But really through those 4 years of being in AE at MicroStrategy, that's really where that self-learning and development kind of came to its critical mass.
So what was it that, because, there's lots of learnings, you can go on the internet and you can get lost with all the different types of selling, and all the different methodologies that are out there. Why did you choose to follow the paths that you've chosen? What was it that really stuck out about those different options?
I guess I always look to who has been the most successful and why, and that's both from a company and an individual standpoint. So you look to the likes of Mongo and AppDynamics and Snowflake and many others, and you see, okay, what are they doing that we're not, or what are they doing that I could do more of, and then who they're, and just the company, but then also the individuals, what's their career background, how have they got to where they are, what methodologies are they practicing, how are they selling, and just always being curious to what others are doing, I think really helped. And then, once you kind of get a grasp of what some of these organizations are doing and why they're winning and why they're succeeding, then like you mentioned, it's very easy to go online, research. There's never been better access to what McMahon and Kaplan and that whole crew and all of them are doing. And just whether it's podcasts, books, or just picking up the phone and networking and asking them.
And for me, this is the point, and this is one of the real core reasons why we wanted to get you on the show today, Seth, was to really understand and get your perspective of, this isn't something that's being taught to you. You're going out there and you're going and finding this information. So what it's allowing you to do is really differentiate yourself and give yourself maybe an edge over your other peers. But what were the notable things that you saw yourself doing that really gave you that extra edge? What was it? Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to do too much of a disservice. It's just not all self-learning. There's a lot of great things at Birst, a lot of great things at MicroStrategy, even better things at MicroStrategy today. But it was always around how, first and foremost, looking at how we win and lose. And I always felt like we just got stuck in extremely technical conversations, where even if I was sitting at the other end of the table, was like, would I buy what this guy's selling? Where's the value in this for me? How does this change my business? How are you different than that guy or that one? And that's really where it's like, all right, how do we differentiate? How do we switch to selling value and selling solutions? And then obviously that opens up a whole playbook of ideas there. But really doubling down on emphasizing on, okay, I'm not selling software. I'm not selling a product. I'm selling a solution, and it provides value to this business by impacting, these key KPIs, and it gets that person promoted and that person into the role they want, and that just unlocks a whole nother area of going back to my personal why. It's like I want to lead organizations, and you can't lead unless you're really selling in a different approach.
Was the impact of applying that mindset instant, or did it take time to kind of harness?
Definitely time. Definitely time. Time and practice.
How did you know to stick at it? You know, why did you think I need to stick at this and really kind of perfect this?
I would say obviously there's a level of success that was had with it in my career, and I could kind of see, okay, yeah, I think we won it because of that. There's a lot of that, but just more generally, one of the key things was the level of people that I was talking to in an organization. You know, when we were running kind of the standard technical playbook, whatever it was back in the time, you know, you get lower level stakeholders. There'd be seemingly no compelling event. You'd win some, you'd lose more than that. But when started implementing some of these ideas, then just getting more senior engagement, actually speaking to them about the initiative and their strategy of what they're working on, that's where I really saw it start to click. And
in terms of when you were kind of going through that, you're obviously, were you tracking the metrics? How did you know? Obviously, you can see some of the conversations, but were you tracking it in any way? Were you doing anything more intentional to really understand where you are on that path?
At the point in time of an AE, I could have definitely been more well-tuned. And hence why there's a lot of tracking that we do now. You know, as a leader, I'm very intensive with it across the team to track both the leading indicators and the post indicators. You know, who we're talking to, what we're talking to them about. As an AE, you know, I was focused on, okay, how can I sell bigger deals and reduce the time to close? And there was a bit of chaos, and then everything through time got organized.
Do you think that because you obviously had to work that out, your appreciation of these metrics now really makes sense to you because you've literally had to work that out, and you can see the importance of that?
It's almost a shortcut in some ways, you know, taking the playbook approach. You know, one of the things I'm doing this week with my team is we're running a whole training on creating value offerings and how to execute MBMs, and just really transitioning to some of the tactical stuff you can do. You see tremendous results from it.
And MEDDPICC for you, was MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC a thing for you at MicroStrategy? Was that something you took on as your own initiative? When were you introduced to MEDDPICC?
I was first introduced to it probably at the time. This dates back to 2018, 2019. In terms of one of the kind of exterior learning things I was doing was I took part in, it was Revenue Collective, it's now Pavilion.
Right.
And so I, you know, at that point in time, I was like, all right, MicroStrategy is providing a great foundation, but I want to learn more. So I seek some exterior connections through that, and that's where, you know, I was able to network with some sales leaders at that point in time. Also took some of their courses, and I'll never forget. There's as part of one of the courses, we were lucky enough to get an hour with John McMahon.
Oh wow!
And after that, bought the book, read it 5 times. Read it another 5 times. No, I didn't read it 10 times. But that was probably the key transitionary moment in terms of MEDDPICC or MEDDPICC.
Right. Okay. And so obviously as an enterprise AE, talking to your first year, which is obviously your building year, really then started to continue that development and personal development. 2019, 230% of your target, which again is probably the start of real high trajectory sales and really starting to smash those targets. Was that the bit that really cemented all the additional effort and everything you were doing, that it was starting to come together?
I want to say yes, but no, because you get that win, and whether that win got me to 230% or not, but you're always thinking you could have done something more.
So enterprise sales, obviously, as said, very, very successful year. Then step up into a senior enterprise account executive. You run that for 2 years. Where did Snowflake come in? Talk to us about the next move, because at that point, obviously, 2022, you move over to Snowflake. Talk to us about that point in your career.
Yeah, and so continued through those 4 years as an AE at MicroStrategy. The success was there, the learning was there, but it just never felt like quite enough. I always feel like the numbers didn't even matter. I could be doing more. I could up my game a little bit more. And so I went through a little bit of a soul searching moment and said, okay, where can I go learn more? I was selling 7-figure deals at the time, so it wasn't necessarily where can I go sell more, but it's where can I go learn more? Where can I go develop more? Where can I gain those skills so I'm ready to take that leadership jump when the opportunity presents itself? And at the time, Snowflake was a great opportunity. Playbook company, great sales leaders, very close related market to the one I was in at the time with MicroStrategy, and now I'm in again. We're partners with them, but it just seemed like a great jump where I didn't need to worry too much about the technology side of that because I was familiar with it, and I could just continue on in the learning adventure.
What would you say were the real learning points of that role? What did you learn, addition to what you had learned through your own personal development and also, your experience at MicroStrategy?
Yeah, and it was, probably some, I don't know if it's the most, but close to the most beneficial or impactful 6 months I've had in my sales career. And it was a short stint, but it wasn't by design. We'll get onto that in just a moment, I'm sure. But it was like a 6-month crash course in the Playbook community and best practices. And really what stood out to me the most throughout that time at Snowflake, I mean, obviously great product, but more importantly, great people and great colleagues and leaders. But the emphasis on PG.
Right.
Live and die by PG. Which was always coming from a BDR background. That's kind of how I built my own business as when I moved into the field as an AE, but just so it wasn't necessarily on the individual level, the importance of PG, but how do you collectively build that as a group? And how do you, set the vision, get the team mindset there, and then put the structures and the discipline in place to excel at that. That was a very strong key learning that I'll always thank Snowflake for there.
Were there any interpretations of what you had studied kind of in a more academic way when actually you saw it in practice at somewhere like Snowflake? It kind of helped you really understand and see how it really came together? Or did you have any kind of was any of your interpretation misconfigured? And did Snowflake help you recalibrate that in any way?
I'll give credit in terms of the mindset around truly selling to value offerings, value pyramids, and just the rigor in terms of, okay, you've got an MBM. How do you prepare for it? What are you leading with? Where's your value offering for that? Why do you think they'll respond to this? Or, how go through and do the practice of this, and just the next level of dedication and focus in terms of whether it's through my time at Snowflake or MicroStrategy or Birst. It's just, hey, throw the product out the window. What's the value? What's the solution you're going to be selling them?
So it's not necessarily that there was a misinterpretation. It's the discipline to the application, which was more profound to you. rather than actually understanding the teachings.
Yeah.
And do you think that's the big difference between, there's lots of organizations that run this type of playbook, but the playbook companies do it particularly well. Do you think that's the kind of the difference between the interpretation and how it's actually applied?
Yeah, because you have the tactics and the process and kind of your engagement model, but then it just becomes around the culture and the mindset to actually go and do it, and the A players that you bring in to execute that playbook. So it doesn't matter if you have the best playbook and the best customer engagement model, the best sales process. It's around the people that you bring in to execute that vision.
So why did you not stay?
Very good question. My journey has always been to become, one of the next leading CROs. And when another point of when I was leaving MicroStrategy, at that point in time, I felt ready to move into leadership. They were extremely grateful to be offering me opportunities back in the US. But unfortunately, I bought a house. I have a dog here. Got a girlfriend. I was like, guess I can't just move back now. But there wasn't anything within the UK or within Europe at a time. And for all the reasons just mentioned, the great learnings at Snowflake, that's why I made the jump to Snowflake. And then throughout the start of my time at Snowflake, I think I was there a matter of 4 or 5 months before the CRO and the CEO of MicroStrategy rang me up and said, "We got the opportunity you wanted. And, we're ready for you to come back and lead the team. Are you interested?" And it was a period of reflection, because obviously the role, the company, the people I'd work with 100%, I wanted to come back. Ultimately, that's why I did come back, obviously. But it was just like, oh, I'm learning so much good stuff. Have I learned enough from Snowflake? It was almost like that at that point in time. And then a couple months later, decisions were made, and came back to lead the team at MicroStrategy. And probably one of the best decisions I've made in my career, because essentially one of the best parts about moving back, going away to Snowflake, having that learning exercise, then coming back and getting to double down and re-implement all of that stuff at MicroStrategy, plus everything else I've learned in my career, and plus what other things, tactics, MicroStrategy's working on, really gets you into the mode of how you see things actually, how you see all these tactics actually get influence the sales cycles, the processes, and it's been very impactful.
So obviously that exposure to seeing it applied at kind of across the entire organization, and the rigor of that kind of gave you a belief in this is, you kind of doubled down on it. And what impact has that had since you've kind of introduced some of those? I know it's collaboration, but what kind of impact has it been having at MicroStrategy, you really applying a lot of those principles?
Yeah, and MicroStrategy then it was 2022 when I came back, and now 2023, it's in a very unique position where we are an established software company, but with a wide base of customers, and historic success. And that fundamental puzzle piece that was missing was just, an excelling sales playbook. And what we were able to do is take the success that was there and further to that, because it had dipped off a little bit. There had been a couple of changes in leaders. There had been a couple of years where things could have been a little bit smoother, let's say. But coming back into MicroStrategy and have through partnership with our CEO, our CRO, and some of our European sales leaders, having their back to say, hey, we're going to become a playbook company now. Let's go implement. It's not about MEDDPICC. That's just one of these tactics. It's about the culture. It's about the mindset. It's about the vision we're on. Coming back, reintroducing all of that, And it's been fun. It's been a learning experience. I think one of the key things we first did at the beginning, going back to PG, was just, guys, don't even care how much we close this quarter. Let's just double and triple down on PG. And for a couple quarters, we did PG, excelled our targets, made that the only priority. And then that's ultimately one of the key reasons why we're able to take a team that was, when I came back, performing 30-40% of their number. And then Q1 of this year, we were able to get over 210% of our quarterly number.
Wow, that's a significant increase. And I just had a question, which is going back to a comment that you made at Snowflake, which was just how much PG was being implemented and the discipline behind that. Did it help being in an environment where everybody was disciplined in that, rather than in an environment where it's only us or it's only me that's doing it?
100%. And there's two sides to that. There's the competitive side, because obviously we're in sales. You want to be at the top of the leaderboard. But probably more importantly, there's the collaboration and learning that comes through that. Oh, you tried this type of message. Oh, you're chasing that type of an account with this message, reaching out to this stakeholder with this point of view. And really through the collaboration, that's also a huge game changer.
So how have you now found that exact same situation, now trying to implement a playbook within a large organization? Where has it started to have an impact? Are other business units looking in on you? Are management really starting to think, what's Seth doing? Why is he doing things different? Or is it a unification of this process and playbook that is now starting to be adopted across the whole organization?
Yeah, it's actually a well-timed question. But I get one of the key parts is our VP of Europe, Emmanuel Bouchard. He's fully backed this. He himself comes from ex-Playbook companies, and he's really helping me deliver this, not only in my region, but also across the business. So just yesterday, we were doing a training exercise or enablement, knowledge share, however you want to frame it, where I was going through our PG best practices as a region to all the sales leaders across Europe. And we're going to standardize across, not saying we're going to standardize solely on what I'm putting forward, but using that as the framework to then evolve from there. From a PG exercise, we've done the same with stuff like QTRs. And to me, of course, some of that is a little bit satisfying to see your stuff being recognized and repeated elsewhere. But the best part of it, again, is it's about the learning and the knowledge that other teams and other business units can collaborate and add to that, so that ultimately the final product and the final output is that much better.
Have you seen that the culture has been quite infectious? Has it been fully embraced? Has there been any resistance? Has it been kind of a hard transition?
Yeah, so it's been a smooth journey. Hasn't been perfect, but we saw a lot of the team become early adopters, if you will, of it, and now those are the same ones that are exceeding their quotas to date. We've seen some who were, kind of a little skeptical at first, but now they're bought in and they're motivated. And then, of course, there's always certain circumstances where people aren't on board, and you just have to determine what the right fit and the right direction for those people is.
And how does having a central playbook like this give opportunity for coaching?
So we're a data and analytics company, so we got a lot of data, but the data that the playbook we're operating under now produces, just for example under PG, is very impactful for coaching. I'll give you a great example. So one of the things we're working on right now with the team is, we measure pipeline created, new business meetings, discovery calls. We go through it on a weekly and a monthly basis. And one of the things we can see is that, hey, we're over exceeding in terms of pipeline created, discovery calls are right on point with where they should be, but we've got a little bit of a dip in the new business meetings. And that's not that's ultimately outright wrong that it's there, because we're still exceeding the pipeline creation targets. But hey, how do we then say, all right, we didn't start this with a proper new business meeting. So let's go through and see, hey, is this really qualified? What is our value offering for this customer or prospect? Have we engaged? Do we have a champion? Have we tested that champion? Have we engaged with the economic buyer? Do we really truly understand their pain to a point where we can not only identify but indicate and implicate that pain? And the amount of data that running the playbook provides just provides so many more coaching opportunities than it moved from this stage to this stage in Salesforce. And so it's been very impactful in that way.
So what's your outlook on kind of MicroStrategy now and the kind of the next few years?
Extremely optimistic, and genuinely so. In terms of, from a product perspective, the product's never been stronger. Just launched MicroStrategy 1 at our last conference last week. But more importantly, in terms of our go-to-market strategy, and and again, this is not just across the UK and Northern Europe, but this is more so across the whole organization. Just the level of sophistication and value and sophistication in the ways we're going to provide value for our customers has completely changed over the course of the last couple of years.
Obviously, you can see the difference, but do you think that what impact do you expect that this will have on the overall business? I suppose is the question that I want to ask.
I think what we'll see is a huge uptick in short-term pipeline creation, followed then by obviously closed business. But more importantly, the success of our customers will be providing more impactful solutions where our customers, one of the key things I love is all around champion building and, using champions to say, hey, this is how we impacted this business and this person's career. And being able to deliver those valuable solutions for the customers, then everything just becomes clockwork because everything's moving in that direction.
Yeah. I think you've given a huge amount of inspiration to individuals that may be within the Playbook community and have questioned stepping outside of the community, right? And thinking of going and joining an organization which may not, have the Playbook within the organization. What advice can you give to somebody that maybe really bought into an opportunity, bought into management, the technology, but they may not necessarily adopt that, the Playbook? How does that person go and start the process of being able to implement that and start influencing that within an organization?
I think there's a couple of things. There's leading by example is a key one. And because sales is so merit focused and you can lead through a sales cycle, deliver on that sales cycle, and introduce all these new ideas, and through that obviously you get the success, ideally, hopefully, touch wood, but you also you're working with your wider account team and you're getting them bought into the process. So even just as an individual going out, whether it's through the learnings that your organization provides, going out doing some self-learning, implementing that on every conversation, every meeting, every sales cycle you're having, bringing in your wider account team into this mindset, you can start to make a change just through that alone.
I think it's a perfect time to reflect on what we've heard, because I think there's some real key things that have really, really kind of jumped out listening to your story. And I think there's a lot of people out there that perhaps find themselves in a situation, a company, a role, where perhaps they don't have the resources around them that they necessarily need. And I think it's quite easy to hide in that situation and wait for others to come and help you. The reality is that you've never had it perfect, but yet what you've been able to do is have the right mindset to go and work it out and make the best out of your own situation. And if the answers weren't immediately available to you, you were still able to go and really find the resources, find the people, and just make a success, the best success you possibly can of the situation in the best possible way. And I think that's really served you well, because you've never rested on your laurels. You've always been a student of the game. And the impact that that's had is profound, because it's enabled you to go and develop and learn a playbook and really apply it. And now you can see how it's all really started to come together, and the impact that your thirst for excellence is really having on an overall organization. And, I think that's just an amazing takeaway. And I'm certainly really enjoyed hearing your story. We've obviously been working closely with you for a while now, but it's amazing to share your story, and I'm hoping that our guests and our listeners will have taken a lot from the conversation today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and a really inspirational conversation for me, for all those reasons. And as I said, I think this is for our viewers and our listeners. It's an opportunity to think about what more could I be doing for myself. Stop relying necessarily upon the things that are immediately available. How do I go out there and seek new opportunity to learn and develop? So thanks ever so much for giving us that inspiration today, Seth.
Thank you, guys.
So to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. Please do subscribe to our following channels: iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are in the description below. But we look forward to welcoming you back to another session soon. Thank you very much.